The results of a 5-month audit into behavioral health providers in New Mexico were so disheartening, the Human Services Department forwarded the report to the state's Attorney General and suspended payments to 15 providers. Now, those providers service 85% of the people paid for by the state to service this community. Laura, we're talking over billions, overbilling 36 million, tens of billions of dollars here. Possibly fraudulent activity, that's yet to be told. We'll let the reporters figure that out as time moves along. But in the overall sense, this has got to be a disheartening turn of events for anybody in the business of behavioral health and worried about family members, their own community, their neighbors who may be, they've had some things about your overall sense of how this hits a situation like this.
Well, not just the reporters that should entangle this in terms of legal issues, but also, the Attorney General, which I think it's been referred to the Attorney General for further investigation on fraud.
Right.
And it's both the federal and the state level. You mentioned 36 million, but it's also, another couple of numbers. It's 85% of the state's spending on health, on this, mental health issues, and then at least 30,000 patients that have been affected. So widespread systemic problem, 15 providers. So we're not talking about just one little rogue clinic that wasn't doing something right. This is clearly a systemic problem that needs to be addressed. And I think we all have to take an active role in dealing with this, because we've seen some incidents recently of people who have, something has snapped, clearly. Right. We have the shooting that occurred at the church where the guy said that, there was some Masons involved and he, stabbed people at a church. That was clearly a mental health situation. Right. The guy who threw his mother and her boyfriend over the river, or tried to after beating them because they were clones. The guy who broke, a former La Cueva football star, broke into a home in the Heights and took a bath and was clearly, these are all mental health issues and things that as a community we have to address, and not just at the point when they commit a crime or there's somebody that's harmed or stabbed or whatever, but we have to take a more proactive approach. And this is supposed to be a key part of that, which is clearly not being managed properly.
And speaking of which, Rob, all 15 failed to meet minimum reporting standards. Minimum. We don't know what they are at this table. We have to imagine it can't be that onerous if you screw up even just the minimal stuff.
Yeah, and it's been reported in the Journal. The Journal's done a nice job following this thing up. I think the heart of this matter is the audit. And the people who from these various mental health agencies are defending themselves, saying this audit's out of whack. But the audit does bring up a lot of questionable things. Talking about executives getting lots of pay. There's 11 current executives in one agency or one company making six-figure incomes. So, and if the audit comes back as credible, and if the Attorney General's office comes back and says there's some fire here with the smoke, then this is a big story.
Sure, and it took reporters, Mylan, some digging to get who we were talking about in the first place here. And now that we have the names of the 15 providers that for a couple days we didn't know who they were, does that make a huge difference in your mind on the who, or is this more of a systemic, overall, huger problem for you when you look at it?
Well, I think it always makes a difference to know who we're talking about, to put a face on the issue. And that's happening when you have a sort of antiseptic overview. It's hard for people to identify with that. But now, if you know the institutions involved, and in some cases the individuals involved, that makes a big difference. And believe me, the people on the receiving end of that don't like it. So.
Yeah, that's probably true right there. The idea though that now that folks are out there, they've been named, I have to imagine even in this circle there's some sort of a due process that has to come to the fore, meaning they have to defend themselves somehow. So the facts of the matter are still in play.
Sure.
But your reporter's gut sense of this, these folks have the drop on all 15 of these people, or do you anticipate some of them are going to come out?
I don't know. Whenever you get into one of these where a government agency is saying there's wrongdoing, who knows the details? It's difficult to assess how credible this is. It does look damning on the surface when you have something that widespread. But the particulars, it's sort of like criminal court cases. I don't think we have much of a presumption of innocence anymore. Most people go into court thinking, if I get on the jury, the guy probably did it. And some of that carries over into other parts of society. But we all know that there are cases where the government doesn't have it right. So, I don't have a sense of how accurate it is.
Good point there. James, there is a process, speaking of due process, for folks to appeal, using that term not in the legal sense, but they can say, look, we still need to get paid and here's why. you know, folks need to get paid because we hear from the state that these folks should have money in the bank to handle these things. I'm not quite so sure about that as I read it. What's your sense there?
I think that certainly I can see both sides of that. On one hand, we say, you know, why are we going to keep on putting money into providers that that an audit has found to be abusing the system? On the other hand, in a case like Presbyterian was among those that are named as one of the 15, and they note that having their payments withheld, this was related to behavioral health, but they're basically getting all of their Medicaid payments cut off. They describe that as being up to 15% of their cash revenue. It jars their ability to provide all health services. Now, there's no question we have to get to the root of, what could potentially be fraud or mismanagement. But when you start dealing with large organizations that have their hands deep in the state's healthcare system, it's possible that there could be other detrimental effects down the road.
See, I'm glad you mentioned that because it seems to me they have a way to deal with things like paperwork, right? They're set up for it. It's not a mom and pop organization over there. They know exactly how to file things. They're in the business of doing that. So that tells me there's something interesting going on there. And for Laura, for some of the smaller outfits, this could be highly impactful, which brings us back to what you just said earlier to begin this. Who's not going to get services in the meantime? There's a potential problem here, it seems to me.
Absolutely, there's a huge problem. And I think, for me, this is such a widespread problem. I feel like it might just be the tip of the iceberg in terms of a bigger problem across the board. And it signals to me that, people in charge, regulators, folks in the government need to pay more attention to this. There needs to be a lot more fine-tooth comb in terms of both reacting to this audit and to the practices, but also proactively changing the system so that you don't fall back into this kind of problem. And so, shrinking the government or not filling positions, which I know is something we've done here in this state, I don't know that that's the solution. In fact, I know that's not the solution to moving forward to address some of this. We have to make sure that we're fully staffed with competent people and that we're able to actually go in there and provide the kind of direction that needs to happen.
That's right. Let's back up just to pull the lens back a little bit on this one for all you guys. And Rob, just talk about the need for these kind of services in our state, an overwhelming need for services. You look at the numbers for our suicide rates compared to the rest of the country, teen suicide rates, all the other behavioral issues that happen with that. Might this not be an opportunity, as Laura says, to blow the whole thing up and just start over again and really kind of try to come up with something better for services people?
Yeah, that's, I guess, the idea behind what free market people say creative destruction.
Right on, yeah.
To me, the on the one hand, this audit, I believe, came from a firm out of Boston. So you would think that they don't have an axe to grind one way or the other, and they're looking at these numbers.
And to be clear, do I have it right that the agency reached out to that firm to check on these things? How did that all come about?
I'm not sure about that. But then on the other hand, in defense of some of these agencies or some of these companies that are being questioned, there doesn't seem to have been a pattern in previous years.
Right.
So we'll have to wait and see how things get sorted out.
Right. Mylan, same question, or roughly the same question. Opportunity here? Or do we have to live with this and just kind of muddle
there is
along?
opportunity. Every year in the legislature, we see bills for more money into mental health programs. Often they don't go anyplace.
Why is that?
Well, money is finite and requests are infinite. But we hear a lot about even things like post-traumatic stress disorder, not only with soldiers, but mostly with soldiers, but often with other people. And even that didn't get funded this year. There was a bill on that to do a pilot program there, and we have lots of people coming back from combat zones. So it is a continuing issue. Perhaps this shines a little more attention on it.
Right. Let's finish up with you, James, on this. Again, we've had our issues here in the city of Albuquerque with this, going back many mayors. We've got a lot of NIMBY issues. Nobody wants any of these services in their backyards. The whole thing. Again, opportunity to just take a different look at this for all of our sakes.
Well, I think the big challenge that we're looking at is that this isn't an isolated incident. A lot of these providers are, they're entirely different circumstances, different parts of the state, doing different things, and yet, 15 different providers were found with the same thing. It leads to the criticism has been turned back on Optum Health, the company that manages these funds, with the question, how did 15 providers go by unchecked? Why are we just discovering this now? This company has been managing these funds for at least 5 years.
That's right.
And so it really is a question of I mean, it's systemic, it seems.
We'll see how this plays out. I vote opportunity. That's how I see this. You know, there's got to be something we can get out of this that serves all of New Mexico. Now, in a moment, we may not be getting any more water from Mother Nature, seems like it, but that's not going to stop us from talking about how we use what we've got. Laura Paskus and John Fleck are up next.